Well, if you've seen some of my more recent videos, wait a second. I wrote this script like 6 months ago, and that just doesn't make sense anymore, so let me start again. So, listen, I've always been into dating sims, okay? I just love. What can I say? So, last year, I kind of went off the deep end with mobile dating sims and visual novels, but this wasn't just like a phase I was going through. This is a long lost passion, left not dead, just dreaming. Now, we won't go as far back as like Newgrounds dating sims or anything in this story, but we will be going back to 2007. Sweet, strange 2007. And we're not really talking about a dating sim either, but today we're going to be talking about a little bit lesser known PS2 game called Chulip. To be fair, in order to know what this game is, you either have to live under a rock or know me in real life, since I've always found a way to sneak this game into conversations with friends over the years or force them to watch the first couple hours of it over drinks or whatever else. Hated by game critics, but loved by me and probably some other people with great taste out there, Chulip is one of those, what one might call a sleeper hit, where its true value wasn't seen until its time was long gone. I have a lot of love for this game, not only because it's considered like one of the worst games ever, which just automatically puts it into a game I have to experience for myself bracket, but it's also simply just one of the most unique games I've ever played. The art style, the humor, the soundtrack, the story. Chulip is just one of those games that will never ever be made again. So let's take a closer look at it now. So you probably know how this section goes. This is where I read you a bunch of lines from Wikipedia, basically. So Chulip was released in Japan during the PS2 Golden Age in 2002. However, in order for it to make its way across the Pacific, it took until 2007. What? So that's hilarious, first of all. All it says here is delays. To be fair, it's not really like... okay, so it didn't sell well at all. Let's get that straight. I'll just read this. According to Media Create Information, Chulip sold only 6,645 units during its first week of release in Japan. So, yeah, that's like abysmal, right? But anyway, Chulip was developed by a group of 12 to 14 people in a company called Punchline. So you already know this game's going to be one long running joke and packed to the brim with charm. I'm using charm here the way that restaurant people might use the term rustic. So if you're unfamiliar with rustic or charm in this case, here's a brief interpretation of what I would consider to be the semantic components of these terms. It looks bad. It looks unfinished. It looks rough around the edges, like anyone could do it. But it probably tastes pretty good, if you understand what I'm saying. It states here that the idea for the game was born out of the director Yoshiro Kimura's visit to what Wikipedia describes as Western countries and seeing couples kiss in public, which apparently was not common in Japan at the time, pre-2002-ish. In addition to that, the title came as an idea from some party he attended, but the details really are lacking here, so I'm not gonna really expound upon this too much because I have no clue what this sentence means. But basically, chew is the sound that you make when you kiss, and lip is the thing that makes up part of your mouth, so chew lip. It's cute, kissy lip, mwah mwah, chef's kiss kind of stuff. We love it. So here's the thing, like I said earlier, Chulip didn't sell well. It took forever to come out here, and critics unanimously hate it. Now, luckily for you and me, I'm no critic. I am indeed a warrior of love. So I'm just gonna show you proof that people hated this game here real quick. I guess Game Informer also called it the worst game of 2007. That's shameful. I looked at the games that came out in 2007, okay? It's true that Chulip is no Persona 3. It's no Mario Party 8. But if you're trying to tell me that Chulip is a worse game than this Drake and Josh video game, you need to get a grip, okay? So let me show you what makes Chulip so great and what makes critics so critically unaware. So you've been seeing bits and pieces of the game throughout the video so far, and I'm going to remind you, this was made by 12 people around like 2000. Like, I think the game looks great. The animations are quick and clunky, but they got flair. The overall art style is like cartoonish and cute, but it's also kind of unsettling and strange. They kind of take like everyday mundane elements of life and people and exaggerate them in a way that's pretty creative and intriguing. Take for example, Mr. Retired Bucket. He was once a trash bin, I assume, but now he's retired. He still hangs out with other trash bins, probably, because he can't really let go of his work. His work has become his life, even in retirement. Or take, for example, the policeman character, kind of a bobblehead, who at night will shoot without warning at everything he sees, and in the day will tell you that committing enough crimes will land you in the graveyard. Now wait a second, that's not really an exaggeration at all. Moving on. The soundtrack is one of the catchiest around. The 4 main areas all have these swanky, like, barbershop quartet tracks that are basically impossible not to sing along with once you know them. And the music doesn't take itself seriously enough to where it should be judged critically at all, but I read that some reviewer found the soundtrack boring. I have no clue, like, what kind of music they listen to, but they must have been playing the game on silent, because the soundtrack is far from boring. It is upbeat, goofy, whimsical, playful. It can only bring joy to the listener. There is no other possibility. Well, except for maybe this super sick enka song that plays in Julie's bar. This probably fills the listener with sorrow. It is certainly a... This is the kind of music you put on when you get really drunk and you're sad and alone, and you can just emulate that sense of longing while you cruise. It's supposed to be goofy, so the graphics, the sounds, the gameplay, and the objectives are all in synchronicity with the absurdity of everything that is Chulip. I think it remains consistent in its weirdness from like the first mission, I guess you could call it, to the last. And it only gets better too. Like at first it's actually kind of normal. It's like talk to this guy, get this item, stuff like that, regular. But as you progress through the I would say it's about an 8-hour game or so, it only gets weirder, which halfway through feels like an impossible feat. Like halfway through the game, you're like, oh wow, I think this is it. I think this is the pinnacle. This is the peak of strangeness. It's not going to get any weirder from here on out. That's it. We're done. But no, it's bonkers. It's off the rails. But I find that commendable. I guess it's, the game is just as weird as the concept of people kissing in public, It's obviously gross. It's almost as bad as holding hands in public, which might be the most lewd thing imaginable. So in order to progress through the game, you have to talk to specific NPCs at certain times, kiss everyone in town, and build a strong heart so that you can write a love letter to the girl of your dreams. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, personally, I find Chulip to be mechanically easy, but the amount of patience that you'll need as an inexperienced player is sort of, how do I put this, saintly? You'll have to be very committed to finishing this game in order to finish it at all. I don't think I fully completed the game for a few years after buying it, since there's a couple points of the game where, like, if you haven't kissed everyone available and leveled up, like, as much as possible, you should probably just restart. Like, some of the later game kissables do a lot of heart damage, and also there's a lot of, like, things that happen in the main storyline that just deal damage as well. So you really have to be up on your kisses. You know what I'm saying? But one thing that I want to add that I think is just super cool is that Chulip's a game that really benefits from the player reading the instruction manual. You remember those things? I love manuals, whether we're talking board games, video games, machinery, whatever. I love that they exist, right? And Chulip has like an extensive mini guide to the whole game in there. There's availability times for all the NPCs, tips, tricks, maps, checklists. Whoever designed the manual really wanted you to be able to enjoy this game. So I think that's pretty neat, because I'm trying to think of other instruction manuals that worked as walkthroughs, and I don't really, maybe for like the first level or something, but like I can't really think of any other manuals that dueled as a walkthrough. If you can, please let me know. I'm very curious. But anyway, so there's a couple things going on in Long Life Town that you come to learn about. The main issue, of course, is confessing to the girl of your dreams. So your father advises you to write a letter. So you go off in search of a letter set, and then you write a pretty good one, I think. But as you drop it in the mailbox, the man who lives in the bottom of the mailbox tells you that your letter stinks and then gives you some tips. After you retrieve this dude's treasured love letter set, which is absolutely vital for some reason to write the best love letter that you can, it's soon stolen by one of this guy's disgruntled coworkers who hasn't received his salary lately. And then, once Electrical Pole's co-workers find out that he received severance pay, they beat him up and divvy up the set between themselves. So, the game kind of follows from there, the whole point is getting that letter set back together again. But regardless of the actual game story, there's actually a lot of concepts and ideas that come up in Chulip that I think everyone can really relate to. Dan Yamada, the electrical pole man, often asks himself deep philosophical questions that anyone would ask themselves when their paycheck was late or if it bounced. Like, what is happiness? Or when you get Batayan, the free-spirited guitar-playing guy, a job, which he's been asking for and looking for constantly up until this point. Like, the very first day that he goes to work leaves him psychologically drained and miserable. He no longer finds joy in his hobbies. He no longer has the energy for anything besides work. The image of these identical factory workers, nameless but numbered, entering and leaving the factory is enough to make anyone question whether what they're doing in life is actually worth it. The only people who are living out their dreams, or who are appearing to be living out their dreams, like Goro, the sweet potato salesman, are treated with disdain or shown in a pretty negative light. Goro and his wife Julie are in an abusive relationship, which has strained their family so deeply that their daughter has run away from home, spending all of her time loitering around the abandoned lot, playing with cats and looking through her telescope late at night. Students aren't going to school, so the teachers aren't getting paid, so crime is on the rise. It's a really dark game, all things considered, but the darkness isn't like fantastic or exceptional. It's the kind of darkness that we all experience in life. Lonely people lash out in a rage when they're interacted with outside of their comfort zone. Small business owner-operators are struggling to get by in a rapidly declining local economy. All these concepts are delicately strung together and hidden behind like this lol so random exterior. But the irony isn't lost on me. And it wasn't lost on me in 2007 when I was also struggling with the question of whether I should go to school or hang out in the abandoned lot, trying to become a man with a strong heart by kissing every underground resident I encounter. All in all, Chulip is an unpolished gem. Games are certainly more than their gameplay mechanics, and lots of games were toying with that concept even before the indie game booms of recent years. Part of me wants to say, oh, I wish they would remake Chulip, refine it a little, fix the text, make it more accessible for the current gaming world, now that everyone plays games and it's no longer like a niche nerd hobby that you hide from most of your friends. But a bigger part of me rejects the notion that games with flaws should be remade or fixed at all. I like the broken dialogue. I like how tedious and annoying games where you have to manually save can be. I love trying to figure out what aspects of the game were favored and paid special attention to by the developers. Like the focus on the sounds in this game. The birds, the crickets, the afternoon horn thing. All these are just tiny little brush strokes that merge and meld together to create a truly beautiful piece of art and a satisfyingly unique experience that can only be Chulip. And Chulip isn't the only beautifully flawed game in existence, it's one of many. I don't want to get into this too much in this video, but there's a concept I've really been trying to wrap my head around lately of like, why am I personally so attached to games that have like dialogue mistakes or weird bugs or glitches or what people might consider or call something like industry flaws. So like, that's beyond the scope of this, but when I hear complaints about recent games that come out where people are disappointed with like the localization or whatever, I'm always trying to figure out like what the big deal is, especially if the game is cheap or free. Chulip was released in 2007, like I said, and in 2007, games were usually sold new for $50. Chulip, I think, was sold for $30 initially, but both price tags on my copies say $15. The price was reduced very quickly, even after its initial price reduction. So it's not like you were wasting $50 on a game with tons of spelling errors or whatever. Final Fantasy VII had weird text too. Most translated games have weird localization stuff or like some stuff that comes out a little incomprehensible. It doesn't invalidate the other aspects of the game, and it shouldn't detract from it. In most cases, it makes the game more memorable and memorable. However, this is really a topic that deserves its own spotlight, so I'm just gonna stop thinking about it now, but it haunts me. So, what do you think of Chulip? Are you one of the lucky people who got to play it? Is this your first time hearing about it? Would you play a truancy simulator? Obviously, you know how I feel about it, but I'm curious to hear from others who love the game, forgot about it, whatever. Oh, and happy Valentine's Day or whatever, if you're into that kind of thing. I definitely didn't do this on purpose or anything. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that short little love letter to Chulip. I really appreciate you watching. I'm realizing now at the end that I didn't really give away too much, and I think that's kind of like what my intent is here. If there's any way that you are able to play it, I would say that you should play it because it's really fun. It's probably incredibly cheap. Like, let me see, like, what? Wait, what? Never mind. Bye.